Baron Vesk was known across the star system for his pride and sharp tongue. He ruled over the planet Thalra with an iron fist, respected and feared by many. His palace stood tall on the highest cliff, overlooking the shimmering blue seas below. People said he could bargain with the toughest traders and come out on top every time. But tonight, at the grand feast in his palace, the Baron was not thinking about business or power. He was thinking about fun. The great hall was filled with nobles, merchants, and traders from many planets. Crystal chandeliers sparkled in the soft light. Exotic foods were served on silver platters and music floated through the air. Everyone was in high spirits. Baron Vesk sat at the head of the table, watching the crowd with a sly smile. On his right sat his daughter, Lady Mira. She was young but sharp-minded, with eyes that seemed to see more than most. Mira was proud and strong. She had grown up surrounded by wealth and power, but she often felt trapped. Her father's world was full of rules and expectations, and she longed for something more. As the feast went on, Baron Vesk began to tell stories and jokes. The room filled with laughter. He loved to be the center of attention. Then, in a moment of boldness, he stood and raised his glass. "I have a challenge for you all," he announced. "I will trade something very precious, a treasure no one else owns, and I will do it as a joke." The crowd leaned closer. They loved a good challenge, especially from the Baron. "Who will accept?" he asked, his eyes sparkling. There was a pause. Then a tall, smiling man stepped forward. He introduced himself as Captain Jaren, a trader from a distant human colony. Humans were a rare sight in these parts, and many nobles looked down on them. But Captain Jaren had a confident air. He did not seem afraid. "I accept your challenge, Baron," he said calmly. "What will you trade?" Baron Vesk smiled wider. "My daughter, Lady Mira." The hall gasped. Some nobles laughed nervously. Others looked shocked. Trading a daughter like an object? It was unheard of. But the Baron was known for his strange jokes and bold moves. "It is just a joke," he said, waving his hand. "No harm done." "Lady." Mira looked at her father, surprised and confused. She could see the amusement in his eyes, but also something careless. She stood up, her voice clear and calm. "If this is your game, father, then I accept the trade," she said. "I will go with Captain Jaren." The room fell silent. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. Baron Vesk raised his glass again. "To new beginnings," he toasted, laughing. Captain Jaren smiled politely. "Thank you, Lady Mira. I promise to treat you with respect." And with that, the deal was made. The next morning, Lady Mira prepared to leave the only home she had ever known. She packed a small bag with a few belongings and looked around her room one last time. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting warm patterns on the floor. She took a deep breath and tried to calm her nerves. Her attendants helped her onto the sleek starship waiting at the palace gates. Captain Jaren greeted her with a nod. He was tall and kind-looking, with eyes that seemed to hold many stories. As the ship lifted off, Lady Mira watched her home grow smaller below. The Baron stood on the balcony waving, his face unreadable. The journey to the human colony was long but smooth. Lady Mira spent the time learning about the ship and the human crew. They spoke a strange language, but many knew a common tongue that she could understand. She listened carefully, curious about these people so different from her own world. When they arrived at the human colony, Lady Mira was amazed. The city was bright and alive with color. Tall buildings of glass and metal stretched toward the sky. Gardens bloomed everywhere, and people moved with a cheerful energy. Captain Jaren showed her around. He explained how humans valued freedom and friendship. They worked together to build their home, sharing ideas and helping each other. Lady Mira felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. This was a world so different from the strict order of Thalra, but she also felt hope. Over the next days, Lady Mira began to explore more. She met scientists who studied stars, artists who painted strange pictures, and children who laughed and played freely. She saw kindness and strength in these people. One evening, as the colony's twin moons rose in the sky, Lady Mira and Captain Jaren sat together watching the stars. He told her stories about humanity's struggles and dreams. "Your father's trade was not a joke to me," Jaren said softly. "I see you as a person, not a prize. You are strong, brave, and wise." Mira smiled, feeling warmth in her heart. For the first time, she believed that maybe this new life could be something good. But far away on the planet Thalra, Baron Vesk paced in his chamber. The laughter from the feast had long faded. The reality of his careless joke was sinking in. He wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Yet somewhere inside, he hoped his daughter's strength would shine, no matter where she was. Lady Mira's first days on the human colony were filled with wonder and confusion. The planet was called New Hope, and it lived up to its name. The air smelled fresh and clean, unlike the heavy perfumes of her father's palace. The sky was a soft blue, with fluffy clouds that moved slowly across the sun. Captain Jaren walked beside her, explaining everything with patience. "Here, people work together to build a better life," he said. "We value kindness and respect. No one is above another." Mira listened carefully. She had never heard such words spoken with such truth. Back home, life was about power and control. Here it seemed different. Freedom and friendship were more important. She met many people in the colony. There was Lena, a scientist who studied plants that could heal sickness. Lena showed Mira the gardens filled with flowers that changed colors in the sunlight. There were children playing games that Mira had never seen before, their laughter ringing through the streets. At first, Mira felt lonely. She missed her home and the familiar faces. But the humans welcomed her warmly. They were curious about her world and eager to learn. Mira found herself smiling more often than she had in a long time. One day, Captain Jaren took Mira to the colony's library, a large building filled with books and holograms. "Knowledge is important here," he said. "We learn from each other, no matter where we come from." Mira spent hours reading stories from different planets. She was amazed by the humans' ability to dream and create. Their history was full, you said. Part 2. 850 words ka lekho or interesting huna chahiye or third-person style ma lekhni ha or simple basic English ka. Don't use any violated word. So please avoid any violated content. ChatGPT said, "Certainly. Here is part 2 of your story. About 850 words, written in simple, clear English third-person style, engaging and free of any violent or inappropriate content." Part 2. A New World, a New Life Lady. Mira stepped off the sleek starship onto the soft ground of the human colony. The air was fresh and cool, carrying the gentle scent of flowers she had never smelled before. Around her stretched a city unlike any she had ever seen, bright, open, and full of life. Tall buildings with smooth glass walls reflected the sunlight, and gardens filled with colorful plants decorated every corner. Captain Jaren stood beside her, watching her face carefully. "Welcome to New Hope," he said with a warm smile. "This is where humans are building a new future." Mira looked around, amazed and a little overwhelmed. The sounds, the smells, the people. It was all so different from the grand palace on Thalra. There were no heavy robes or strict guards here. Instead, she saw people moving freely, talking and laughing with ease. "Come," Jaren said, offering his hand. "I will show you around." They walked through wide streets lined with trees. Children played freely, chasing each other and shouting, "Enjoy." Vendors sold fresh fruits and strange foods from colorful stalls. Mira noticed that everyone, no matter their age or job, seemed friendly and welcoming. Jaren explained, "Here, people work together to help each other. We believe in respect and kindness. It is different from your home, I know. But many of us believe it is better." Mira nodded slowly. She remembered her father's strict rules, the cold formality of the court, and the endless games of power. This place felt like a breath of fresh air, yet she also felt unsure. Could she really fit into this new world? Over the next few days, Mira was introduced to many people. There was Lena, a scientist with bright eyes and a quick smile. Lena showed Mira the colony's gardens where plants glowed softly at night, and some could heal wounds or cure sickness. Nature teaches us many things, Lena said. We learn to listen to the world around us, and in return, it helps us grow. Mira was fascinated. Back home, science was often hidden behind walls and secrets, but here, it was shared openly with everyone. She also met children who asked her questions about her planet. They wanted to know what life was like beyond New Hope. Mira found herself telling stories about the strange creatures and the towering mountains of Thalra. The children listened with wide eyes and laughter. Despite the kindness around her, Mira sometimes felt the weight of loneliness. She missed her family and the familiar halls of her home. At night, she would sit by her window, looking up at the white stars and wondering what her father thought of her now. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the city, Captain Jaren joined her on the balcony. The soft glow of the moons painted their faces in silver light. "You are brave," Jaren said, quietly. "It is not easy to leave everything behind." Mira smiled faintly. "I have no choice. My father traded me like a joke." Jaren's eyes grew serious. "That was wrong. You deserve better than that. Here, you are a person with value and strength." Mira looked at him, feeling a warmth she had not known before. For the first time, she did not feel like a prize or a pawn. She felt like someone who could build a new life. Days turned into weeks. Mira learned to work alongside the humans. She helped in the gardens, learning how plants could be cared for and nurtured. She joined classes where people shared knowledge about technology and history. Each day she grew more confident. The humans showed her the importance of community. They celebrated together, helped each other in times of need, and listened when someone was sad or afraid. One afternoon, Mira attended a festival celebrating the colony's founding. Music filled the air, and people danced in colorful clothes. Mira joined in, laughing and spinning with children and adults alike. Captain Jaren watched her with pride. "You are becoming part of this world," he said softly. Mira's heart was full. She realized she was changing, not losing who she was, but growing into something new. The strength she had hidden under the expectations of her old life was now shining bright. But even as she embraced this new life, Mira could not forget the star system she had left behind. She knew that the news of her trade had traveled back to her father. How would he react when he learned what she had found here? Would he understand the courage she was building? One day, while walking through the busy market, Mira saw a group of travelers from Thalra. Their faces were serious, filled with questions and worry. She felt a pang in her heart. Jaren placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You are not alone," he said. "We face the future together." Mira took a deep breath and looked at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The world was full of possibilities, and she was ready to face them. Her journey had only just begun. Lady Mira woke up to the soft light of dawn filtering through the wide windows of the human colony's guest house. The gentle hum of the city outside felt like a new kind of music to her ears, a rhythm of life full of hope and promise. She stretched and looked around, remembering how much her world had changed since she left the grand halls of her father's palace. Her thoughts turned to Captain Jaren. Over the weeks, he had become more than just her guide. He was a friend, someone who saw her as a person and not a prize to be won or traded. They had shared stories of their homes, their hopes, and their fears. Mira found herself smiling more often, and a warm feeling grew inside her, a feeling she had never expected. That morning, Jaren arrived at the guest house ready to take her on another tour. "Today I want to show you something special," he said with a mysterious smile. Mira's curiosity was sparked. "What is it?" "You'll see soon," he replied. They walked through the bustling streets toward the heart of the colony. Along the way, Mira noticed how people greeted each other with kindness. No one looked down on her or treated her as different. Instead, they were curious and welcoming. As they approached a large dome-shaped building, Jaren explained, "This is the Unity Hall. It is where we come together to share ideas and celebrate our differences. It is a place that reminds us that even though we come from many worlds, we are stronger when we stand together." Inside, the hall was filled with people from many planets, humans, aliens, and others Mira had never seen before. They spoke different languages and wore clothes of many colors and styles. But here, they were united by a common purpose: peace and cooperation. Mira felt a sense of belonging she had never known. She met leaders and thinkers who welcomed her warmly. They listened when she spoke about her home planet, its beauty, and its challenges. They shared their own stories and dreams. One elder, a kind woman named Risa, took Mira's hand. "You are a bridge between our worlds," she said softly. "Your courage to come here shows the way for others." Mira was moved. She realized that her journey was bigger than herself. It was about bringing two very different worlds closer together. After the gathering, Jaren took Mira to a quiet garden nearby. The air smelled sweet with blooming flowers, and a small stream flowed gently through the green grass. "Tell me," Jaren said, sitting beside her. "What do you think of this place now after some time here?" Mira looked around and smiled. "It is a world full of kindness and hope. People here believe in helping each other. It is very different from my home, but I like it." Jaren nodded. "We humans have learned that strength is not just about power. It is about working together, sharing, and understanding. I see those qualities in you." Mira's heart warmed. She felt stronger, more confident, but she also knew her journey was not over. She still carried the weight of her past, the careless trade her father had made, and the expectations waiting for her back on Thalra. As days passed, Mira and Jaren grew closer. They spent hours talking about the stars, the future, and the stories of their people. Mira found herself laughing more and worrying less. She began to dream of a life that was not defined by duty or tradition, but by love and choice. One afternoon, while helping Lena in the gardens, Mira noticed a sudden feeling, a flutter in her chest. She paused, wondering what it could mean. Later, when she told Jaren, he smiled gently. "Maybe it is the beginning of something new," he said softly. "A new life, a new hope." Mira's eyes widened. The thought filled her with wonder and a little fear. But deep inside, she felt ready to face whatever the future held. Meanwhile, news of Mira's new life began to reach her father's court. Baron Vesk listened with growing unease as his advisors spoke of the human colony and the changes Mira was making. The joke he had made now seemed serious. His daughter was not just a traded prize. She was becoming a symbol of something greater. The Baron's pride wrestled with his growing curiosity. Could his daughter really be part of a new world that challenged everything he had believed? Back on New Hope, Mira stood at the edge of the city, looking up at the stars. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but she no longer felt alone. She carried with her the strength of two worlds, the wisdom of her home and the hope of the humans. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet promise grew, a promise to build a future where differences were not feared, but celebrated. As the moons rose, once more Mira took Jaren's hand, ready to face whatever came next. Lady Mira had grown used to the rhythms of life on New Hope. Each day brought new lessons, new friendships, and new hopes. The humans had welcomed her warmly, and she had begun to feel at home among them. But one morning she felt something different, a quiet change inside her that she could not ignore. At first it was just a small flutter, like the gentle touch of a breeze. Then, over the next few days, Mira noticed she was more tired than usual. She sometimes felt dizzy or hungry at unexpected times. She wondered if it was the long journey or the stress of her new life catching up with her. One afternoon, as she sat with Captain Jaren near the garden's flowing stream, she finally spoke. "Jaren, I think something is happening to me. Something I don't understand." Jaren looked at her with calm eyes. "What do you mean?" Mira took a deep breath. "I feel different." like a new life is growing inside me. Jaren's face softened into a gentle smile. Mira, this is wonderful news. It means you carry a child. Mira's eyes widened. A child? Her mind raced with questions and feelings she had never expected. She thought about the future, about herself, about Jaren, and about the life growing inside her. I don't know what this means, she said quietly. Back home, a child born from two worlds is rare. Some might see it as a problem. Jaren took her hand. Here, it is a blessing. Your child will be a symbol of hope, proof that two worlds can come together in love and respect. Mira smiled, feeling warmth spread through her heart. For the first time, she truly believed that the future could be different from the past. But news traveled fast, even across the stars. Back on Thalra, Baron Vesk sat in his dark chamber, his face heavy with thought. He had heard rumors, whispers of his daughter's condition and the possibility of a child that carried both human and Thalran blood. His advisors were divided. Some urged him to send soldiers to bring Mira back. Others warned that such actions could start a conflict that no one wanted. The Baron's pride wrestled with his fears. Finally, he made a decision. He would send an envoy, not soldiers, to New Hope. They would bring a message and perhaps an offer to talk. Meanwhile, Mira's life continued with new joys and challenges. She began to feel the child move within her, a small kick that made her smile and sometimes cry with happiness. The people of New Hope surrounded her with care and love. Lena helped her learn about health and wellness, while the children often came to listen to her stories. One evening, as the colony's twin moons rose high in the sky, Mira stood on the balcony, holding her growing belly. Jaren joined her, his eyes full of hope. Our child will be part of something greater, he said softly. A new beginning for both our worlds. Mira looked up at the stars and whispered, I hope my father will see that too. The days passed, and the colony prepared for the arrival of the envoy from Thalra. Mira felt a mixture of anxiety and determination. She was no longer a girl traded as a joke. She was a mother-to-be, a bridge between two civilizations. When the envoy arrived, Mira stood tall, ready to speak not as a traded daughter, but as a representative of a new future. The meeting was tense at first, with many questions and doubts. But Mira's courage and honesty began to break down walls. She told them about the kindness she had found, the strength she had discovered in herself, and the hope that their child represented. Slowly, the envoys began to listen. Back home, Baron Vesk waited anxiously for news. He realized that his daughter's strength was greater than he had imagined. The joke had become something much more important. As the stars shone bright above, Mira stood surrounded by friends from both worlds. The child inside her was a promise that differences could be overcome, and that love could build bridges where none seemed possible. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it was filled with hope. Baron Vesk sat alone in his private chamber, the heavy silence pressing around him like a thick fog. The grand palace of Thalra, usually a place of comfort and control, now felt cold and distant. The Baron's thoughts raced, tangled with pride, fear, and hope. His daughter, Lady Mira, the jewel of his house, was far away on a human colony called New Hope. The careless trade he had made as a joke had turned into something far more serious. Mira was carrying a child that symbolized a union between their proud Thalran bloodline and the humans. The news had spread quickly through the Baron's court. Some nobles whispered with disdain, others with curiosity, and many with worry. A child born of two very different worlds was unheard of, and to some, unacceptable. Baron Vesk had always believed in tradition. The ancient customs of Thalra had shaped his family for generations. To him, loyalty to his people came first, and the thought of his daughter joining with humans unsettled him deeply. Yet, beneath his pride, a quiet voice asked him to reconsider. The Baron summoned his closest advisors to the council chamber. The large room was filled with ornate tapestries and glowing crystals. The council members took their seats, watching the Baron with serious eyes. My friends, the Baron began, his voice calm but firm. We face a new reality. Lady Mira is with the humans, and she carries a child that belongs to both our people and theirs. A murmur ran through the room. Some looked shocked, others skeptical. What do you propose, my lord? Asked Councillor Dren, an older man known for his cautious wisdom. Baron Vesk paused. We cannot send soldiers to retrieve her. Such an act would bring war between our worlds. War benefits no one. The council fell silent, understanding the truth behind his words. Yet, the Baron continued, we cannot ignore this union. It may be a chance to build bridges where before there were only walls. Councillor Lyra, a younger member who had always favored progress, spoke next. My lord, Lady Mira's courage is a light in this darkness. She carries the future. Perhaps it is time to embrace change. The Baron looked at her thoughtfully. Change is difficult. It tests the very foundation of who we are. But change can also bring strength, Lyra said. We must choose what kind of future we want. The Baron nodded slowly. He had spent many nights wrestling with these thoughts. The joke he had made was no longer a joke. It had become a turning point, not only for his daughter but for all their people. I will send a delegation to New Hope, he declared at last, not to demand, but to listen, to understand, and to offer peace. The council members agreed, some with relief, others with cautious hope. Back in his private chamber, Baron Vesk allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability. He thought of Mira, the proud, brave girl who had accepted her new life with dignity and strength. He wondered what she had learned among the humans, and how her child would grow in a world so different from their own. I hope you will forgive me, Mira, he whispered to the stars outside his window. Meanwhile, on New Hope, Lady Mira prepared to meet the envoy from Thalra. The news of the delegation's arrival spread quickly through the colony, sparking a mix of curiosity and excitement. Mira felt a strange mix of emotions, hope, nervousness, and determination. Captain Jaren stood by her side, steady and supportive. Whatever happens, he said gently, we face it together. Mira nodded. I am ready. For too long, I was seen as a possession, a joke. Now I am a mother, a bridge between worlds. The day the envoys arrived was bright and clear. The delegation from Thalra included diplomats and scholars, all dressed in traditional robes that shimmered with ancient symbols. Their leader, a stern but respectful man named Ambassador Kalen, stepped forward to greet Mira. The first meeting was formal and tense. The envoys asked many questions about life on New Hope, about humans and their customs. Mira answered honestly, speaking of the kindness she had found and the hope that grew inside her. Ambassador Kalen listened carefully. He asked about the child Mira was carrying, and she spoke of the child as a symbol, a promise of unity and understanding. As days passed, the envoys observed the colony, witnessing firsthand the harmony between its people. They met with leaders and citizens, learning about the strength found in cooperation and respect. Mira spent time with the delegation, sharing stories and answering questions. She was no longer a traded daughter, but a representative of a new future. Slowly, walls of suspicion began to fall. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned gold, Ambassador Kalen approached Mira. You have shown us a path we did not expect, he said quietly. Your courage has opened doors. Mira smiled. It is only the beginning. Back on Thalra, news of the envoy's experience returned to Baron Vesk. He felt a stirring of hope. Perhaps his daughter's strength and love could heal old divisions. The Baron realized that the future was not something to control, but something to shape with care and courage. And in his heart, he silently prayed that his daughter would forgive him for the joke that had changed everything. The days that followed the arrival of the Thalran envoys on New Hope were filled with hope and cautious excitement. Lady Mira moved among the humans and her own people, acting as a living bridge between two very different worlds. The child she carried was more than just a new life. It was a symbol of unity, a promise that the future could be better Captain Jaren stood beside her through every meeting and gathering. His quiet strength and kindness gave Mira the courage she needed to face the difficult conversations ahead. Together they shared stories, laughed with new friends, and dreamed of a world where differences were not barriers but bonds. The human leaders welcomed the Thalran delegation with open arms. The colony's council chambers, once filled only with humans, now buzzed with voices speaking in many languages. Ideas were exchanged freely, and respect grew where suspicion had once ruled. Ambassador Kalen, the leader of the Thalran envoys, spent hours talking with the colony's scholars and leaders. He was a serious man, but Mira saw a change in his eyes, a softening, a hope. Slowly, he began to understand the strength in cooperation and friendship. One afternoon, in the large hall of unity, Mira stood before both humans and Thalrans. Her voice was steady and strong as she spoke. "My father once traded me as a joke," she said quietly. "But I am not a joke. I am a daughter of two worlds, and I carry the future." The crowd was silent, listening to every word. "This child will be born into a world where we must choose to live together or remain divided. I choose unity. I choose hope. I choose love." Her words touched many hearts. Slowly, applause filled the hall. It was not just for Mira, but for the dream she held. Back on Thalra, Baron Vesk watched news of the growing alliance with a mixture of pride and humility. The man who once laughed at the idea now saw clearly the path forward. He sent messages of goodwill and promises to support the peace that Mira and the humans were building. On New Hope, life went on. Mira's belly grew rounder and the child inside her moved gently. The people around her celebrated every small sign of life, a heartbeat, a kick, a smile. One evening, as the twin moons rose again, Captain Jaren and Mira sat beneath the stars in the garden. The soft light made everything seem peaceful and full of possibility. "We have come far," Jaren said, taking her hand. "Yes," Mira replied. "But there is still much to do." They dreamed of a future where their child would know both worlds as home. A future where humans and Thalrans would explore the stars together, sharing knowledge and friendship. The colony prepared for a great celebration, a festival to mark the new alliance. Music, food, and laughter filled the streets. People from many planets came to join in, sharing their own cultures and traditions. Mira stood at the center, radiant and strong. She felt the warmth of a community that had grown around her, one that included humans, Thalrans, and many others. The Baron's message arrived just before the festival. He spoke of hope and respect, of a future built on understanding. His words were a promise that the old world was ready to change. As the festival lights twinkled beneath the stars, Mira felt a deep peace. The child inside her was, not just hers or Jaren's. It belonged to all who believed in a better tomorrow. And in that moment, surrounded by friends from many worlds, Lady Mira knew that the foolish joke of her father had sparked a new beginning. One filled with courage, love, and endless possibility. The day dawned bright and clear on New Hope, as if the very stars were smiling down on the colony. The great festival was about to begin, the celebration of a new alliance between Thalra and the human worlds. People from many planets gathered to share music, food, and stories, but most importantly, to honor the hope that Lady Mira and Captain Jaren had brought to life. Mira stood at the center of the gathering, her hand resting gently on her belly. The child she carried was a symbol of unity, a living promise that two very different worlds could come together in friendship and love. Around her, humans, Thalrans, and many others mingled freely, laughing and sharing the joy of the moment. Captain Jaren stood beside her, proud and calm. His eyes held the same warmth that had comforted Mira throughout her journey. Together, they represented more than themselves. They were the beginning of a new future. The Baron's message had arrived. Earlier that week, Baron Vesk, once proud and rigid, now spoke with humility and hope. He recognized the strength in his daughter's choices and the importance of the alliance she had helped build. His words of peace and respect echoed throughout the gathering, a powerful sign that even the oldest traditions could change. Mira looked out over the crowd and felt a deep sense of peace. The road had not been easy. She had faced uncertainty, fear, and doubt, but every step had led to this moment. She was no longer a traded daughter or a pawn in a careless joke. She was a leader, a mother, and a bridge between worlds. As the festival began, music filled the air. Bands from different planets played strange and wonderful instruments, blending their sounds into a harmony that celebrated diversity. Children danced and played games, learning from one another and discovering new friendships. Mira found herself surrounded by people eager to share their stories and dreams. She spoke with young Thalrans who dreamed of exploring the stars alongside humans. She listened to humans who wanted to learn more about the rich culture of Thalra. Together, they imagined a future full of adventure and discovery. Later, as the twin moons rose in the sky, a quiet moment came. Mira and Jaren walked to a peaceful garden filled with glowing flowers and soft fountains. The night was calm, the air warm and fragrant. "I can feel the child moving," Mira said softly, placing her hand on her belly. "It's like a small miracle." Jaren smiled, his eyes shining. "A miracle born from two worlds. Our child will grow up knowing love and hope." Mira nodded. "I want our child to know both worlds, the strength of Thalra and the kindness of the humans." Jaren took her hand gently. "And we will make sure of it." As they stood together under the stars, Mira felt the weight of the past lift from her shoulders. The joke her father had made, once careless and thoughtless, had sparked a new beginning, a beginning full of courage, understanding, and endless possibilities. The festival continued late into the night. Songs were sung, stories told, and new friendships formed. The alliance between Thalra and the human colony was no longer just words on paper. It was alive in the hearts of every person gathered there. Back on Thalra, Baron Vesk watched the news of the festival with a proud smile. He had learned that true strength came not from control or fear, but from love and acceptance. His daughter's journey had changed him as much as it had changed the world's. In the days that followed, plans were made for future collaborations, shared missions to explore new planets, joint schools to teach children from many worlds, and festivals to celebrate the richness of their combined cultures. Lady Mira, once traded as a joke, had become a beacon of hope and unity. Her child would carry the legacy of two worlds and the promise of a brighter future. As the sun rose again on New Hope, Mira stood on a balcony overlooking the city. She felt the gentle kick of new life inside her and smiled. "The future is ours to shape," she whispered. "Together." And with that, the story of a traded daughter, a brave captain, and a child born of two worlds came to a joyful new beginning, one where humanity's courage and heart shone brightly across the stars.